Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Rules Expansion gift set. Now this was sent to me by Wizards of the Coast for the purposes of doing this review video, so I do want to thank them for that. However, they are not influencing the video, they're not scripting it or pre-screening it, so the opinions that I express in this video are 100% completely and totally my own. The Rules Expansion gift set is kind of unique amongst like a lot of the gift sets that have come out over D&D's past. I have some from 3rd edition, there were some put out in 4th edition, but they've always been collections of previously released books that are sort of combined together, either as like the core rule books or they're sort of built around a theme. Like there were some ones for monster manuals, there were some for like the Races of series from 3rd edition. Stuff sort of along those lines. And this one is more or less the same, but it actually includes one book that right now, at least, the only way to get it is through this gift set. So that book is going to be the main focus of this video because 2 of the books that are included here I've already done my reviews for. I'll touch on them just a little bit, but the main thing I want to focus on is the 3rd book. So the books included are Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and thankfully a book that doesn't have the word everything in its title. We've got Monsters of the Multiverse. There's also a DM screen included in here. I have not looked at the DM screen yet. I've already gone through and, like I said, did reviews of 2 of the books, and the 3rd one I did look through just so I could sort of have an idea of what's in it when I do this review video. Now, the retail price for this is a bit steep, but keep in mind, again, you are buying 3 books at the same time and a Dungeon Master screen and the slipcase to carry them in. So it's $169.95 US and $221.95 Canadian. As a Canadian, I gotta say that $221 is pretty hard to justify, but I've heard stories of groups where they're, players in the group, like they're interested in different books from the set. So they'll sort of pool their money together, they'll buy the set, and then they'll just take the book out of it that they wanted with the portion of the money that they contributed towards it. Some, groups have thrown money in together to pool it together and bought the books so they can use them at their game. So like the Dungeon Master holds on to them, but the books technically belong to everyone. So there are definitely ways to go about, purchasing this that doesn't put all of the financial burden on a single person. But I will say right off the bat, $221.95 Canadian as a Canadian is a little hard to justify. The $169.95 is a little bit easier because, again, it's kind of, you're buying the 3 books. And usually with these gift sets, they're pretty good about being priced the same way that they would be if you bought the internal components all separately, for like just sort of combining and totaling the cost together. So it sounds like a lot, and for me, it feels like a lot. But you got to keep in mind that you are getting several books in there that, typically range from $50 to $60 on their own or a bit higher Canadian. And you're getting a DM screen, which is like $20 to like $30 Canadian, depending on where you get them from. So the prices are justified as far as like, what it would be to buy all the things separately, but it is still a lot of money. So this is not something that I would recommend as an impulse buy, but if you are a hardcore collector and you're especially interested in cover variants of books, then you may be interested in this. Or if you don't have the books yet, this is a great way to get them and add them to your collection. And at least for another month and a half or 2 months at the time I'm recording this, one of the 3 books is technically right now exclusive to the gift set, but it will be the Monsters of the, I was going to say Masters of the Universe, the Monsters of the Multiverse is going to be released as its own individual purchase that you can make. That comes out, I think, sometime in May. So let's just take a quick look at the case itself. This is just the barcode page that would be, on the inside of the cellophane for your game stores. There's some nice artwork actually on here, and the whole thing, again, kind of has this metallic shine to it, sort of like a foil finish. For those of you that are into card collecting, you've got the Dungeons & Dragons logo here, as well as the ampersand logo, and it is in this like silver, it's silver, but the light as it hits it and you sort of move it, it's got this sort of like, you know, rainbow kind of effect to it. It's actually pretty cool. I actually like the way that that looks. And then on the back, we got this really awesome white dragon. So I do love the artwork there. And overall, it's a nice thick cardstock as well. So it does feel pretty good in terms of durability. I think it would hold up decently well. The bottom is actually really thick on this one. The bottom and top are actually like, you know, like almost twice as thick as the sides. So I think that's actually pretty good because I think that'll hold up a lot better than some of the other gift sets that I have from past editions. So that's pretty cool there. And like I said, we've got the two books that I've already done reviews for. So we got Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So I've already done my reviews on these. I will say of these two, I prefer Xanathar's Guide quite a bit more. Tasha's Cauldron had a lot of stuff that was reprinted from other books, but for a gift set, that actually kind of works in its favor, especially if you're just kind of getting into collecting D&D and you're looking to pick up a few books and have as many options available to you as possible. Having those things reprinted from like the Eberron campaign setting or class options from the two Magic the Gathering campaign books, it actually works pretty well. Overall, though, like I still hate the way that they handled psionics and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So it's from my opinion, it's the weakest of the three books. But for a gift set that's all about adding new options for you, it's still, you know, a great inclusion, even if I don't necessarily overly like the individual book on its own. But as a throw-in for this, it makes perfect sense. And the reprinted materials inside of it actually works really well for like inclusion in a gift set. Again, also something that's kind of interesting about these books is, again, they've got this metallic sort of like foil coating or covering to them. It's not something that shows up very well on camera, I'm afraid. But it might contrast a little bit better because this is just sort of like your standard glossy cover, but then you've got the foil kind of version there, and even on the spine. It's really hard to show up on camera, but it does look nice, I will say. And we got Xanathar's Guide. So again, both really great books. Another thing with Tasha's Cauldron is it does introduce things that are pivotal to the monsters of the multiverse. Can you tell that I'm recording this at like 1:30 in the morning? All right, so monsters of the multiverse. So what exactly is this book? So this book is it's a collection of it's a collection of player character races and monsters from some of the various source books that have come out over the years. So you had, especially like Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordekaine's Tome of Foes. Those ones, you got a lot of stuff that's reprinted from those books into this one, putting them all in one place. But the thing about that is they've made some changes in 5th edition recently in the way that they handle player character races and the way that they handle creature stat blocks, especially when it pertains to spellcasting. And those were concepts, the player character information was actually introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So let's just sort of get right into it here, but we'll take a look at the back here first. Also, none of these books will have barcodes on them, so there's no like MSRP. These are not meant for individual resale. These are meant to be purchased inside of a gift set, so you're not going to find the barcodes there. And for like the older books like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, it does have the new Wizards of the Coast logo. Again, it's sort of a different variation on the cover. Also, one thing I should note about the reprinted books as well, the original versions had an alternate cover, and on the inside here, you would always see what the alternate cover was. So they've got the standard edition cover, and then there's this blank spot here, which is where they would always show the alternate cover. It would usually be the ones for like the game store exclusives, but they don't actually show that here. There is a game store exclusive version of this gift set where it's like in this white box. The books are all white and they sort of have They look more like books that you would like the leather bound books that you might see in like libraries, where they would just, instead of having like full cover art, they would just basically have sort of the circular area on the center of the cover with a single image representing the book. But they don't actually show the alternate covers in there. So again, it's a little bit of a difference between the original books and the ones released in this gift set for people that are interested in some of those changes. And these would also incorporate errata as well, the same way that reprints, like later reprints of the same books would do as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. All right, so let's just open this up here and we'll take a look at the player character stuff here first. And this is going to be like, again, the major change to the way that player characters are made. So in the past, your race would give you 2 ability score increases. One would be a +2 bonus, and it would be fixed, right? So, for example, a dwarf would have +2 to their constitution. And then you would choose, for the most part, you would choose a like sort of like a sub race, or to take a term from another RPG would be your heritage. So you'd be like a hill dwarf or a mountain dwarf. And those ones would give you like a +1 attribute bonus that would also be fixed, but it would be dependent on which of those sub races that you chose. So, like again, for the dwarf, you would get a +1 to strength or +1 to wisdom, depending on which one that you took. So the new way of doing this, and this again was introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which it was originally introduced as sort of like I want to say it was like an alternate way of creating your characters, but it has become the default because the Strixhaven book has a player character race introduced in there, and they have like the same attribute system that's in this book and that was in Tasha's Cauldron. So what you basically get is you get a +2 bonus that you can put into any stat that you want, and you have a +1 bonus that can also go into any stat that you want, but it has to be a different attribute. You can't put the +1 and the +2 into the same stat. Alternatively, you can also take 3 +1s and put them into 3 separate stats. Instead of a +2 and a +1, you could do 3 +1s, but they all have to go into something different. And of course, you can't have the stats be above 20. And it just gives you a little bit of more information on sort of like customizing things. And then we get into the actual races available. I'm not going to read them all out. Again, the major change to them here is essentially the change in attributes. So where it would tell you what your stat increases are in the traits, that's just gone now. So again, you got to keep in mind when you're looking through these that the attribute bonus information is already addressed at the very beginning. Because when I did my Strixhaven review, there were a lot of people, I'm not saying there were a lot of people, there were some people that I think they were confused by the fact that the Owlin race didn't have any attribute modifiers, but they did. It was just listed before the actual race because it's the +2 and a +1 wherever you want them, or 3 +1s wherever you want them, instead of it being dependent on the actual race. So again, we got a collection of races here from some various sources, including Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mordecai's Tome of Foes, and then there was the Elemental Evil Player's Guide, so the Prince of the Apocalypse. There was a player's guide that was produced as a PDF, or you can get the print-on-demand version from over at DM's Guild or Drive-Thru-RPG. And I actually have the physical print-on-demand version. So there are some races that were in that supplement that weren't in some of the other books, or they were reprinted much later. So we have like the Aarakocra, the Aasimar. Again, I'm not going to read these all out, but we're just going to show you sort of what's in here. Some of these have new artwork. Some of these don't have new artwork, but the ones that have new artwork, they look, for the most part, with one exception, look pretty awesome. So this bugbear, like this, does not look like the bugbear from the Monster Manual, and it looks pretty awesome. This could be from like Mordecai's Tome of Foes, but I don't think so. I think this is new artwork, and it looks pretty sweet. The Changeling, Deep Gnomes, the Dwergar, the Eladrin. You got your good old fairies, the Furbolgs, Genasi, and we got the Githyanki and the Githzerai. I love this Githyanki on the Red Dragon attacking the Githzerai. That's really cool. And then you got like the Githzerai, which are more monastic or more like monks, sort of like doing their thing. It's just, again, really cool artwork here. And this goblin is pretty freaking awesome, I have to say. I love that artwork. It's actually pretty dang scary, considering that, normally you don't associate goblins with like being scary or intimidating in any way, shape, or form. But that's just awesome. Then we got the Goliath. Again, that was from the Elemental Evil one. We got the Heron gone. So there are some things that are also reprinted from the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is cool. The Kenku and Kobolds. The Lizard Folk. I love that Lizard Folk art as well. And then we got the Minotaur. This is the one that I've said that like the new artwork was pretty sweet with one exception. This is the one exception. Now, I don't mind the more like human-looking Minotaur-like body because in Dragonlance, Minotaurs kind of take the place of orcs. I don't think there's orcs in Dragonlance, but they have Minotaurs, which are more human-sized and they're more militaristic. I think they have like a strong naval tradition as well. So this one kind of is like, it's something that I think is taken from like a Dragonlance kind of concept. And like holding like the sword there looks pretty awesome. Like I like the armor, the tail, and the hooves. That's cool. But where you lose me is the face. Like that. Like I'm just gonna pick this up and bring this a little bit closer to the camera. Like it looks like a dairy cow, and it's not intimidating at all. And typically speaking, Minotaurs have been designed in their artwork to look pretty cool for the most part. And this one, like it just misses the mark with me. But at the same time, it is cool to have the Minotaur race available. Again, this orc artwork is pretty sweet as well. The Sea Elf, Shatterkai, the Shifter from Eberron, the Tabaxi, and then we got the Turtle. I want to say the Turtle was like an online DMs Guild exclusive because there was a PDF that you could download or you could purchase for like the Turtle. I don't know if it appeared in other books. I don't remember seeing this artwork anywhere, so if you want to play a turtle, there you go. They're in here. And that Yuan-Ti looks pretty sweet as well. All right, so those are the player character races. So I think they said there's like, how many did they say there? There's like close to 30, I think, in there. I'm not going to count them all, but there's like 30. There's like 30 some odd pages of races in here, so there's pretty solid amount. And then we got the Bestiary. So one of the big things with the Bestiary is that some things have been changed in the stat blocks. The main thing that's really changed from like the Monster Manual or Mordekainen's Tome or Volo's Guide is the way that spellcasting is handled. So we've actually got a creature here with spellcasting abilities. In the past, with 5th edition, if a creature had like spellcasting, they would always be the equivalent of a certain level of like, cleric or wizard or druid or whatever it might be. And they would have spell slots based off of that level. So like a fifth level, equivalent wizard would have 3rd level spell slots. It would have 2nd level and 1st level spell slots in their cantrips. Now, not entirely the case, but a lot of times a fair amount of the spells that would be on the spell list weren't ones that would necessarily be the most useful in combat, but it would make sense for them to sort of flesh out the spell list and be more utilitarian sort of thing. So what they've actually done is they've removed that altogether. And there are some changes that come with that I think will have some implications on one class in particular that it's going to be interesting to see how things change as a result of that. So instead of having like an actual like spell slots and spells prepared or whatever that they can choose from, what they actually have is spells that they can do at will and spells they can do a certain number of times per day. So they may have some spells they can do 3 times per day, some spells they can do 2 times per day, some spells they can do only once per day. So it'll sort of give you the breakdown there. It also gives you, of course, their spellcasting attribute and their DC because that's important. But most of these spells that we have down here are, again, more utilitarian. So you've got stuff like Disguise Self, Mage Hand, Minor Illusion, Charm Person, Dispel Magic, Greater Invisibility, and Wall of Force. The Charm Person, Dispel Invisibility, and Wall of Force, those can all be done twice per day, whereas the other ones there can be done at will. So for their more like combat-oriented spells, what they've actually done is they've converted those or changed those into attack actions. So instead of having like Lightning Bolt on their spell list, for example, This particular creature has lightning strike that it can do as an attack. So it gets an attack bonus, so you have to roll to hit. It is only single target. Some of them may be, might have more than one target. This one's only a single target, but it's 8d8 damage, which is, I think, the default, or it's actually more than the default version of Lightning Bolt, because I think that's 8d6. What's also interesting is that there's no saving throw on this ability, and it kind of makes me wonder what that's going to mean for the Rogue class, because the Rogue has the evasion ability, which basically, if they make a dexterity saving throw and they pass, the default version of the ability, if they pass, they take nothing. If they fail, they take the normal amount of damage. They take like the full amount that the spell would deal, but on a pass, they would take nothing. And then they get a greater version of that later on, where they only take half damage on a failed save and none on a successful save. So by taking some of these like these damage dealing spells away, and turning them into regular attacks where you make the attack roll and there's no saving throw involved, it's really going to alter the usefulness of that evasion ability. Now, personally, I'm okay with that, only because my own personal experience, and this is all I'm speaking to. I know in the past when I've spoken based on my own personal experiences, first of all, I've had people tell me that I didn't have my own personal experiences, which is always interesting. But then I've had other people assume that because I was relating my experiences, that I was trying to equate the entire gaming landscape as being the same way. So I'm not doing that. But in my own personal experiences with some of the players that I've had at my table, not related to the ones that I have currently at my table, but the ones that I've had in the past, especially ones that were coming out of the DMs or the D&D Adventurers League stuff, almost all of them would have a certain number of levels of Rogue to get them to that first evasion ability, and then they would take whatever other class that they really wanted, so that they could basically render most Dragon Breath weapons or a lot of damage dealing spells to be completely and totally ineffective. So this change is definitely an interesting one, and I like it because I think that those individuals, again, from my own personal experiences, all I can speak from, but those individuals may no longer be so inclined to have this sort of build, and instead just make a character that will be fun to play instead of one that they try to build to get around all of these types of abilities. So it's definitely an interesting change, and we'll see how it affects things. And I have to believe that it's going to have an impact on the the new version of D&D that's going to come out in 2024. Because if you're having less saving throws, then that rogue ability is less and less useful. So we're just going to see sort of how that changes. Now, that said, some of these creatures will still have your traditional fireball, lightning bolt, and those types of spells on there. So it doesn't completely negate those abilities or those saving throws. But you also have a lot of them that will just instead be converted into attacks that they can make and that have it to hit and no save whatsoever. So just to see how that sort of plays out. So again, I'm just going to flip through here, and you can of course sort of see some of the creatures that are in here. I do like the fact that the undead lich version of the Mind Flare actually gets a pretty decent sizable write up here, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information included in here. So we also do have alignment information for those that are interested in that, I guess. It will say typically, instead of just giving you an actual alignment, so you can sort of do whatever you want with that. Honestly, in my opinion, this could be a whole other video. But I'm just going to say that in 5th edition D&D, alignment doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't, aside from the detect good and evil spell. That's really one of the only major uses that it has. Even things like the holy weapons that used to deal damage against evil creatures now will specify undead or fiends instead. So alignment really doesn't matter in 5th edition, and there were some books where the alignment was taken out of the stat blocks altogether, and I didn't notice until people asked about it or pointed it out to me. So I just it's not a hill worth dying on, truth be told, because there's just nothing that alignment really does anymore in D&D. It used to be really important to certain classes. They could only be a member of that class if they had a certain alignment, and changing your alignment was a huge deal back in the day. but now it really doesn't mean anything. So, you know, it is what it is. And before like Wizards actually took those alignments out, there were people saying that it was time to get rid of them anyway, but then when they took them out, people got upset. So I guess it's one of those, you know, you can't win no matter what. But honestly, in my opinion, you know, the typically is if you want alignments, it's all that you really need, but it's something that I've never really worried about or focused on in when I was designing encounters. So it, you know, just it is what it is. I'm not going to get any further into it. If you want to discuss in the comments, you sure can. But again, be respectful. This is not a place to get into culture wars or political, you know, anything, right? This is just a place to talk about games, and games are meant to be fun, right? Just try to relax. It's a game. It's a game that's important to me, and I love it. But at the end of the day, it's still a game. We got the Aleph, which is actually pretty cool. We got the Annis Hag. I actually really like the artwork on the Annis Hag there. I think that's pretty cool. Then we got the Archer. So these are some of the NPCs from the Monster Manual. We got our Astral Dreadnought, which we also had on the cover here, which, you know, really does evoke the old original like Manual of the Planes kind of feel to me. So I think that's pretty awesome. Also, again, the Astral Dreadnought, for those of you who are fans of the video game Doom, the head of the Astral Dreadnought is what the cacodemons are, like the floating heads. So the cacodemons in Doom are a combination of the Beholder and the Astral Dreadnought. It's like the floating orb of the Beholder, but with the Astral Dreadnought's head. And that's just, I don't know, it's just a cool thing for me because I like Doom and I like D&D. We got some, also we got Baal here. So we have some unique creatures as well. Again, these would be ones like, not necessarily Archfiends, but there are some Archfiends and Archdevils in here. But these are, again, taken from the Mordecai's Tome of Foes. Of course, we've got Baphomet, which is pretty awesome. We got our Bard, and again, you can see, like, the spellcasting information has changed. They have Cacophony as an ability that actually does have a saving throw because it's an area of effect. But they got, like, their spellcasting stuff there, and that they can taunt you. And then they've got their different performance types if you want to just create them sort of on the fly. Barghast, the Blackguard, that is pretty sweet art as well for the Blackguard. So there's a lot of really nice artwork in this book. Even if it is taken from other sources, it's still some really nice artwork. I have to say, I love the Bone Claw. It's one of my favorites. I've never actually used one. It's one of my favorite creatures that I've yet to actually run in combat. But one of these days. We also got some animals included in here, sprinkled throughout. Everything's in alphabetical order. So instead of separating it by, like, you know, monsters and then beasts later on in their own separate thing, they've just sort of incorporated it all together, which is a lot better in my opinion, because it makes it easier just to go through, like, alphabetically. We got the Champion, the Choker, love the Choker, the Clockwork Creatures. Again, we got the Cloud Giant Smiling one. I think that was from Volo's Guide to Monsters. Corpse Flower, Cranium Rats. So those are just gross. They got their exposed brains. The Sonic Rats. Then we got the Death Kiss. I love the Death Kiss. It's just such a cool... I love Beholders. Like, I've never made that a secret. And it's just one of those really cool, like, Beholderkin. That's completely different from all regular Beholders because there's no eye rays, just blood-sucking tentacles. So there you go. Then we got Death Clock. I know it's Deathlock. Deep Scion, Demogorgon. So you got, again, those, like, Demon Lords in here. You've got the Devourer. The art on the Devourer is not bad, but if you want really awesome Devourer artwork, check out the Devourer from the 3rd edition Monster Manual. That thing was like the stuff of nightmares. We got some dinosaurs. This good old Stegosaurus, the Dolphins, the Dragoloth, and some Drow guys here. So we got the Arachnomancer, which again would have has some poison-based abilities, web attack that they can do, and then they've got their spell casting using the new method of spell casting stat blocks, as opposed to giving them like the spell slots and the spells prepared or spells available sort of thing. Got the Drow Inquisitor, the Drow Matron Mother. Again, it gets like, you know, nearly a full page write-up, and then it has a nice large stat block. Yeah, I love Drow. They're some of my favorite things to use, so it's awesome to have that. Dwargar Despots, the Dwargar Mastermind, Dwargar Warlord, I don't actually recall seeing this before. It's probably in one of those books, either Mordenkainen's or Volo's, and it's just been so long. But that thing is friggin' cool looking, and it's actually a demon. It's a fiend. It's not an undead. So that might be from Mordenkainen's if it was in another one, in another book before. But that's the first time I've seen it, or it's the first time I remember seeing it. Then we got the Eidolons with the sacred. I love the sacred statue. That is a callback to the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook cover with the guys prying the gem out of the statue's eyes. We got our Eladrin, the Mind Flayer, the Elder Brain, and I like the fact that they have the full page map of like a Mind Flayer colony. That's pretty awesome as well. Elder Tempest, again, I'm not quite sure if that was in something before. It probably was, but I don't remember it. It still looks really cool, though. The Myrmidons, the Fire Giant Dreadnought, the Fire Newts, the Flynn, and the Flail Snail. I love that Flail Snail. But yeah, the Flynns are pretty awesome. They're like a more powerful version of the Gnoll. And Fraz Urblu. The Froghemoth, you gotta have a Froghemoth. I love the fact there's a Froghemoth here. It's just such a goofy, stupid monster, but I love it so much. Yeah, Frost Giants. We got the Goth, the Gazer, the Greyon, which actually had a mini for it from WizKids. The Giant Strider, the Gif, the Grillion. Actually, this Grillion artwork is pretty sweet as well. But yeah, the Gif, good old Planescape. Planescape and like Spelljammer, Spelljammer. Just the Aquabus, the pistol wielding hippo person. Just you gotta love it, right? You gotta love it. Gith Yankee, the Knolls. Oh, yeah, that Gisserai there too, right? Gith Yankee. I think maybe I missed a page or I just wasn't paying attention. Oh yeah, no, Gisserai there. The Knolls, Grazit, the Grungs. That was from, I think they first appeared in Tomb of Annihilation. The Guard Drakes are pretty awesome as well. Hellfire Engine, again, that's pretty sweet. The Howler, that is some freaky Howler art. That looks way cooler than the Howler that was in like the 3rd edition book. Like that is friggin' scary. I love it. And so again, like I said, most of these are just sort of recollected from other books, but if there had to be changes made based on spellcasting abilities, that will be updated here. I think that's like the major update for creatures. Otherwise, it's just putting all of those, or the majority of those creatures together. Leviathan, Martial Arts Adept, the Marat, Master Thief, the Maw Demon. That's going all the way back to Chainmail. Not the original Chainmail, but the 3rd edition era Chainmail miniatures game. That was from the, oh man, Naresh, the Naresh faction, which is like Gnolls and Demons. So they had that one there. I think it was just called the Abyssal Maw at that point, but yeah, that is awesome. The Mazel, the Meanlock. So a great assortment of creatures like added in here. You got the Mind Witness. This thing is friggin' awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's just this is a really solid like 3rd tier like monster, or third, like I guess not even 3rd tier, like secondary monster manual. This is a book that I will definitely recommend. Then we got Moloch. So we actually have the Demon Lord that the statue was based off of, that you had like the sacred statue entry for earlier. The Morkoth, the Nagpa. This is actually, I love this thing as well. Whenever I see this, I have to think of the Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom arcade game. So Neogi, Neolithids, the Nilbog. You gotta have the good old goblin backwards. The Oblex, this is again a really cool creature. This was from Mordecai's Tome of Foes, and that was actually the result of, like, I think it was like a Make-A-Wish. So someone designed this, a kid designed this, and they actually put it into the game, and that is awesome. I love it. Ogres of War, Orcus himself, the Quickling, the Phoenix, the Redcap, Rudderkin, Seaspawn, Shatterkai. Some cool stuff here. Shadow Mastiff. That's actually a pretty intimidating looking thing as well. Then we got the Shisuva. This was the Abyssal Ravager from Chainmail as well. Naresh, one of my favorite factions. The Slithering Tracker, the Skull Lords are friggin' awesome as well. Again, they were spellcasters, so they kind of got some of that changed around, but they have, like, you know, Death Ray as an ability now, which is just pretty awesome. The Sorrowsworn, the Spawn of Caius, and then some of these, like, you know, almost Lovecraftian type things. The Star Spawn, Larva Mage, again, works really well with like a Caius themed campaign. Stonecurse, Steel Predator, some more Stone Giants, Swashbuckler, Tanarux, or like the Fiendish Orcs. Yeah, there's some awesome stuff. There's some Turtles. Vapric the Destroyer. Oh, Vapric the Destroyer. Oh man, that is... Okay, that is awesome. Do they actually have Vapric in here, or is that just an entry? That's just an entry. That kind of sucks, but yeah, Vapric's voice was a location in the Shackle City Adventure Path. The Venom Troll, the All-Lithid, or Ithrid, however you want to pronounce that. It's super late at night, so I'm not going to try it beyond that. Vampiric Mist, the Varghul, where if you get cursed by it, your head just rips off your body and becomes one of those creatures. We got some Warlocks and some Wizards coming up here. The Warlord, a class that I really wish they would have just made a whole class in 5th edition instead of it just being, you know, part of a fighter. There's the Wizards. So again, with the Wizards, some of them will have like spells. So like the Evoker Wizard is going to have, it does have Lightning Bolt. It doesn't have Fireball, but it has Sculpted Explosion, which is basically Fireball, but they can choose the element. And again, they have their, like, you can do these spells, each of these spells twice per day or once per day, and you can do these ones at will. Inogu, the Yethhound, the Yonti Anathema, I love that one. And some more Yonti, the Yonti Temple. I wish there were actually more of these included in here as well. There's only a couple actual like maps included, but they are welcome where they are in there. And you have Zerael, which was a big part of the Descent to Avernus, which is another campaign that I'm not super keen on. Then we got the Demon Queen of Fungus, and our lists and our monsters broken down by challenge rating, as well as just a little chart for some encounters that you can find in different environments. So pretty cool stuff overall. I'm going to get back to my thoughts on the book at the very end here. I know this is sort of a longer video, but I do want to show one last thing that I actually haven't looked at myself at all. And this is the last component of the kit, or the gift set, I should say. And that is the Game Master screen. So we'll just take a look here. These are the inside panels, and again, some really nice artwork on here. You've got the adventurers from the outside of the gift set, so that's sort of like reproduced from there. You got some orcs laying in ambush, and then on this side, I like that quite a bit. There we got the white dragon once again, and you got some of the other characters. I love the dwarf pulling the cart there. I think that's pretty sweet. Yeah, some really nice, but I like the designs here on the outsides of the screen. I think that's just really, really cool. And then the inside. Let's have a look and see what we've got here. Okay, so this is a very standard DM screen. I'm not going to go into it too much because I've done several reviews of screens with this exact information on here, but just at a quick glance, we've got our actions in combat, which is a good one to have. Long jump, high jump, suffocation, concentration rules. Concentration rules are really important, I think, to have. But then we've got, again, a full panel and a half taken up with your conditions. I really wish they could find something else to put on the screens instead of the conditions, or just cut the artwork out and just have the listings, because it takes up so much space. And I'm sure there's other stuff that they could have put in there. Personally, I don't know exactly what I would choose to put in there, but there's got to be something. And it's just every single screen that Wizards has put out like first party has had those conditions taking up, almost half of the entire product. So I'm not too keen on that, honestly. I think they could have done something a little bit different. It would have been great to see them do something a little bit different, but at the same time, if you don't have a DM screen, then this is still all useful stuff. As much as, I kind of malign conditions always being on the screens, I do freely admit that they are an important part of the game, and there's lots of creatures, lots of abilities that convey these conditions onto the player characters. So being able to find them easily, it definitely makes sense. I just think it would be nice if they started condensing it down and having it take up less real estate overall. But then we've got, again, our standard stuff like setting a DC, which is, again, is good stuff to have. Tracking DCs, again, is useful. Like, the charts that they have here are great. I just kind of wish that they would have sort of shrunk down the condition section. But like everything else, travel pace is sort of often like neglected, but it is important to have. Something that I really do want to get better at incorporating in my game. Services, obscured areas, weather charts is also good to have. And then we've got cover, light sources, encounter distance, audible distance, visibility outdoors, and then food, drink, and lodging, and foraging DC. So the screen itself it's good, it's serviceable. There's a lot of great information on there. And not everyone's going to be in the same position I am. So I really should preface this by saying that I have all of the official 5th edition D&D Dungeon Master screens, from the original one that came out in like 2014 or early 2015, to the reincarnated, to the ones in the like Rick and Morty and the Essentials Kit starter set boxes. I've got the Wilderness Kit and the Dungeons, the Dungeoneering Kit. So I have all of the 5th edition DM screens, as well as several of the third-party ones that were tied to specific adventure paths. Several of those also have the conditions on them. So not everyone's going to be in that position like I am, where they have all of those screens available to them already. So it's probably, like I said, it bugs me because I see these on all of them. But there's a lot of people out there that don't own a screen yet. So if this is their first one, there's some great stuff on here. Like, don't get me wrong, conditions are important to have because they are a big part of the game. All the charts they have on there, I think, are great. Like, I think they have a really solid amount of information on there. It's just me being kind of burnt out on seeing conditions take up so much space, personally. But again, not everyone has like 5 5th edition DM screens already, so I guess that's sort of the difference there. So I should make that caveat that, it bugs me because I have so many of them. But if this is your first screen, it's a great one. Or if the first screen you have is the one from the Essentials Kit, this is a much thicker, much sturdier version of that screen. So this is one that's going to hold up a little bit better. So it's still, it's worth the upgrade if you're looking to get this gift set overall. All right, so with that said, what do I think of this gift set as a whole? It's pretty good. Gift sets they're not really my thing. They're not really my forte. I've never really bought any of them. I typically have all the books that are part of the gift set before it comes out. So, it's a very unique perspective, I guess, for me, looking at one of these really for the first time. But I will say that these are decent books to have in your collection. Xanathar's Guide has a lot of great stuff in it. Tasha's Cauldron, the DM stuff is great. I'm just sort of ho-hum on some of the player options, but that's, again, personal preference. The Monsters of the Multiverse. Now, this is a book that will be getting released on its own in May. So if this is a book that you really, really want, it is coming out individually. So it's not a situation where the only way to ever get this is through the gift set. This book will be coming out a little bit later. And I think it's important to mention that, because if you have all these books, like if you have Xanathar's Guide and Tasha's, and if you have DM screens already, this kit is kind of, or this gift set is kind of a hard sell. Monsters of the Multiverse is a great book, and it does combine, things from several different sources and pulls them all into one, which, with updates. So I think that's, definitely worthwhile. But if you have the other books, my recommendation would be to hold out until this comes out on its own in May. If you don't have these books, or if you're buying as like a group and everyone's pitching in money, and you're either gonna like just take the book that you want from the set, or you're gonna just like have it at your DM's place. He'll hold them, but everyone has, you know, basically like communal ownership over them. This is a decent set to pick up because these are definitely good books. But if you've been following D&D and if you've been purchasing all these things already, it's kind of hard to recommend this, especially for the prices. So the upside for it is that they do have shiny covers, or like these foil metallic covers that you're only going to get from this gift set. So if you are into cover variants, then this is probably worth, you know, picking up if you are like a hardcore dedicated collector and you want all the different versions of the books that you can possibly collect. I understand that it's, you know, it's a thing that people do, and it's definitely recommended from that. If you don't own the 2 books that have previously been released and you're looking to you were considering getting them anyway, then this would be the way to pick them up for sure. But as for someone like me who already owns the books, it's a hard sell, especially with Monsters of the Multiverse coming out in a month and a half from the time that I'm recording this. It's a solid product overall. Like I said, I think, you know, it's definitely worth the money that you're paying for it, because these are, you know, it's basically you're paying the amount that you would for these things individually anyway. So I think from that perspective, you know, it is worth it. It's just a matter of, do you have the books already? Are you into alternate cover collecting? Like, do you want books with like obvious differences, like no barcodes, or, you know, the missing alternate cover art on the inside? Whatever it may be, it's definitely cool from that perspective, and I recommend it from that point. It's just like, for me, as a Canadian especially, $221 is a lot of money to throw down all at once. So it's a little bit tougher for me to recommend this, but I will say if you don't have the books already, it's definitely worth getting. If you're like leaning that way, it's definitely worth it. If you're just looking to get it for the Monsters of the Multiverse, then my recommendation would be to wait until that book comes out, when it comes out in May. But it's a solid product. Like, Wizards of the Coast has put together a decent product, and these gift sets are not necessarily meant for everybody. And I think that's one of the kind of the important things about this is not something that I would strongly think that this is not something that Wizards expects everybody and anyone to be picking up. I think this is sort of a more like again, kind of a premium kind of thing, where it's either something that you would get for, like, if you're a hardcore collector, or it makes for a great Christmas gift, holiday gift, birthday gift. So it's great from that perspective, but it's not something that, you know, everyone needs. It's great for what it is. It's worth it for what it is if you don't already have the components inside. And if you're waiting for just the one book, then my recommendation would be to wait for it. But Monsters of the Multiverse is an awesome book. I do really like it. I'm not keen on the change to the player character like attribute system, but at the same time, it's the direction that Wizards is going in. Again, it's not the hill that I want to die on, so it's great from that perspective. But just recollecting those creatures again, it makes, again, this is something that is a very, very solid secondary monster book after your monster manual. And if you're someone like me, again, when we can start doing stuff in person again, if I'm running games in public, I would rather have this one book with me than 2 to 3 other books with the same monsters scattered all throughout. So really awesome stuff there. Again, it's you gotta weigh your options for the money. It's worth it for the money, but again, there's caveats on there. So I recommend it on the grounds that you don't already have the books, or you're splitting the cost as a group. Or you're just like the hardcore collector who wants those cover variants with like the shiny metallic covers and the lack of barcode and stuff like that. But anyway, let me know in the comments below, what are your guys' thoughts on the D&D Rules Expansion gift set? Are you going to be picking up Monsters of the Multiverse when it comes out? Or did you buy Monsters of the Multiverse, or buy this set just to get your hands on Monsters of the Multiverse? Did you get the game store exclusive version with the white covers and the like this, just the sort of the circular art at the center of the books instead of having like the full cover art? Let me know all that stuff in the comments below. Again, thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sending this to me. It is a solid product. I think you put together a really good collection of books. They are definitely, you know, the things that you want for expanding the rules for your player characters, as well as giving you a few new really cool tools at your disposal and some really awesome monsters to go up against. So thank you guys again very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.